What do you feel is like your biggest success out of all of that so far? Like the biggest thing that you feel, proud of?
Mainly, the thing I'm the most proud of right now is the fact that I introduced an appraisal system for my team, which then I kept them accountable on a monthly basis, and I gave them like accurate information on where they are. And I've been doing that since the last 8 months, and it has brought amazing results in terms of how my team has improved and how they've become so self-made that even if I don't show up at the office or I don't work that day, they're just calling me or calling the project managers, getting shit done. They're connecting with the customers. So kind of things have started to become more automated because of the fact that I introduced an appraisal system, which was evaluating them on different levels. Mm-hmm. Like it's not just their performance, it includes their attitude, their punctuality, the responsibility levels. So, they have to be performing well enough on all those areas, and that has really allowed me personally to be more independent, to do more biz dev, to connect with people more rather than just being stuck in the day-to-day activities of our work,
Very cool. So you're saying basically you'll have an evaluation system. What do you do if somebody isn't doing very well, for example? Maybe you haven't had the best positive attitude or whatever. Like, what do you do in that case?
Okay, so the system I have for them is like an appraisal system, which I created myself. Mm-hmm. And it has a scoring system, right?
Right.
So, for example, it's out of 5. I could give you 1, I could give you 0.5, I could give you 5, I could give you 4.5, right? Mm-hmm. Now, the problem comes when you give someone a 4.5, you give someone a 2, and they think they're a 5 or a 4.5, right? So they debate. Like they say, okay, but, they disagree. They say, okay, you're the boss, you can rate us whatever you want, but we disagree. We think our contribution is more than what you're saying. Of course, no one says when you rate them 5, no one says we're a 2, but usually what happens is the reverse. They say we're not a 2, we're a 4, we're a 4.5. So in order to cater to that thing, you need to have conversations with them on a weekly basis. Mm-hmm. And because I want them to trust my judgment, I discuss with them. I'm like, okay, if I give you a 2 and you think you are otherwise, then let's debate. Let's talk about it. Why you think you're a 4, or why you think you're a 4.5. And then if I feel that they're right and their argument is justified, then I will right away change the score that I've given them. But if I feel that, okay, what they're saying is just out of emotion and not out of self-evaluation of themselves or the work, then of course I won't change the score. And because of having those discussions, they also feel that, okay, the scoring system I have and the way I'm evaluating them is more fair than they actually thought, to be. So that's how I create transparent communication between me and the team and between different team members, is to just have that conversation on why am I rating the way I'm rating them, because if I say, okay, that's your score, no discussions, then of course they have no incentive to actually grow or actually trust me. And if they don't trust me, then probably they won't be with me for a long time.
Very interesting. Just to clarify, so you're evaluating them on this side, and then they're evaluating themselves on this side, and then you combine it and you're matching up to see where the gaps are, and you say, okay, well, let's discuss this one because it looks like we've got a different opinion here. Is that kind of how it goes?
They don't have any evaluation. It's just my evaluation. I send them out every month. By the end of every month, it's like a monthly evaluation. When I send them out, same day or maybe within 2-3 days, we'll sit for a session and we'll talk about it. So the points I've given them, I'm like, okay, it's an open table conversation. Discuss, debate. If you think it's not fair, debate. If not, that's your score. I just give my feedback.
Okay, and do you have all of that tied to incentives at all?
Yeah, of course. It's like, if you, for 6 months, you're like the top performer, you'll get a raise.
Okay. So that's cool. Yeah. So 6-month incentive.
But not consecutive, like any 6 months.
Oh, so they need sort of any 6 months out of the year or something like that, or?
No, just 6 months. Like, for example, there's someone who's like who's been top performer for 2 months, then someone else comes in and becomes a top performer for 3 months, right?
Mm-hmm.
But those 2 months won't be wasted.
Oh, okay. So they're still counted towards their raise. So they just need 6 months eventually, and then boom, they've got a raise. Okay, cool.
And other than that, the other incentive I have is per project. So if a project is good and really profitable, I give them a commission also per project.
Okay. So everybody on the team gets a commission?
It depends on who's involved. Like all the stakeholders will get a commission.
Okay.
But it depends on what work they did and how much. For example, the back-end developer will get more commission compared to the front-end developer just because front-end development work is a bit less compared to the back-end. That's why.
Okay. So it just depends on the amount of work involved in the project.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome.
Exactly.
Okay, cool. So you've got performance evaluations monthly, and then you try to get them to sort of compete to be sort of the most valuable employee of the month.
Number one. And you know what I'm trying to do? To expand on this, I will, because as I'm expanding my team, I will have 2 best people. Mm-hmm. So any month, if you're in the top 2, you're going towards a raise in, getting a raise for 6 months.
Okay, cool.
So I will just increase the number of, I will just give them more leeway because the competition will increase, so it will be harder to be number 1 then. But cool. I just want to keep giving, keep making them feel that, okay, it's not the hardest thing in the world still, even if the team is increasing.
Mm-hmm. Okay, got it. That's awesome. So basically that has helped you provide enough incentives and enough feedback for your team so that you don't have to worry and micromanage them all the time, basically, so you can focus more on business development.
Yeah, so I'll give you a really good real-life example that's just very recent. And what happened was there was this one guy who was performing really well, and then he sort of got relaxed in the month of Feb. So he was like the top performer 3 months preceding to that. Okay. But then that month he was like the lowest performer. So he got like a bit relaxed.
Interesting.
Now, what happened was I showed him the score and I asked him, do you think it's unfair or anything? He totally agreed with me. He wasn't happy, of course, but he totally agreed with me. Like, yes, because I told him you did this, blah, blah, blah. And then 1, 2, 3 days later, nothing happened. Mm-hmm. But suddenly, when I was like doing some meetings, some projects, he kept nudging me about me giving some instructions to him because he just got completed with the work he was doing. So basically his speed was affected because of that evaluation again, because he scored low. He got conscious about that. And then he kept nudging me he kept pushing me to push the customer to actually give feedback quicker because he's done with other things, Mm-hmm. So just a real life example of what's happening because of this.
Awesome. So your employees are pushing you a bit instead of you trying to push them.
Yeah, me or the salesperson or whoever is the client manager,
Yeah.
To push the customer, because sometimes customers are like, oh, we'll give it to you in 3 days, whatever.
Okay, awesome. Thanks, Ibrahim. So when you told me all that, it sounds, first of all, amazing that you're able to basically automate your agency to a certain degree by giving performance evaluations, all this kind of stuff. So one of the thoughts that came to me was, I was just curious if this creates too much competition inside the agency. So that was just one of my concerns when you were talking about that, because I was like, okay, so everybody's kind of competing for that number 1 or number 2 spot. And my concern would be, would the employees basically not collaborate? So the perfect agency, I think you would have somebody that's really good at, let's say, JavaScript on certain APIs or something over here, another guy's working on certain database stuff, and he needs help from the JavaScript guy, and the JavaScript guy needs help from the database guy, but they don't communicate because they're both kind of stuck on their own sort of performance, right? Like they want their own performance to be top-notch, so they're kind of competing head-to-head constantly like this, and they're not sharing the information that would actually help each other succeed. So that would be my kind of concern with that type of management strategy. So how do you get around that, or have you thought of that?
I've actually thought about it, and I've actually addressed it. So when I started this appraisal system, for 1 month, I didn't come up with a backup strategy, but on month 2 and 3, I was like, okay, they'll be fighting like lions or, like wanting to rule the jungle.
Right.
So I was aware of that. Good, actually, a really good observation by you, because, so I came up with a backup. So the backup was, you can always, so even though so you can always share your win with the other person, you know.
Interesting.
So for example, if Chris and Ibrahim are two employees,
Mm-hmm.
and Chris has been, okay, for example, Chris has higher salary, right? So Chris is making 50K per month and Ibrahim is making 25K per month, right? Now, Ibrahim really needs the extra 10K per month promotion. And Chris is fine with whatever he is getting right now, but he's such a good performer that he gets another raise of like 10K, 20K per month, right?
Yeah.
Now, the problem comes like Chris keeps performing while Ibrahim is the same, right? Now, what Chris can do is, so for example, there's a month,
Mm-hmm.
and Chris again comes at the top, and of course he's the one who's deserving. But Chris can always share his win with Ibrahim. So when the boss has to give an increment, it won't count towards Chris's promotion. It would count towards Ibrahim's promotion. The points for Chris will remain the same. Of course, he's gonna stay the top performer in terms of score, but the tag of the top performer towards which the growth will happen will be towards Ibrahim. And that will create a really collaborative culture where if you feel the other person is a bit behind, you can just,
So what is it?
give it to them.
What is it that I'm sharing then? Say my performance was a bit better than yours, and so what would I just feel like? Well, actually, Abraham deserves a bit more because he actually worked really hard this month. So I would somehow share my promotion with you.
Nothing. Basically, basically, it's only one person. So, for example, there's two top performers with exactly the same score. So scoring is done out of 25. So if both people score 21,
okay,
both deserve it. But if there's one person, then there's only one person, right? So if only one person is entitled to the promotion, I just give that month to another person because there's only one person. So rather than me, that other person will get so for example, if there's 3 months stacked up, for number one, they will have 4 months stacked up because I shared mine with them.
Oh, so you can give your number one place to another team member. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So
okay.
that would enhance collaboration with them. Like more teamwork, more,
Okay. That is cool. So it's kind of like you've got this sort of competition mixed with a bit of philanthropy.
Charity. Philanthropy, yeah.
Yeah. So you got like, oh, that's
Yeah.
interesting. I like it. Cool. Well, that's a cool system.